Harmonizing lead guitar parts can be one of the most awesome sounding things ever, but I cannot tell you how many times I have been sent amateur songs that are otherwise pretty awesome until we get to the solo section, and then everything goes a bit pear-shaped because they're always making the same mistakes. And today, I'm gonna try and keep you from making those same mistakes when you're harmonizing your lead guitar parts. To demonstrate each of these examples, I'm gonna be using that thing that I played in the beginning of this that I threw together for this video. It sounds a little 80s, right? Well, I was inspired by today's sponsor, who is Jackson Guitars and this ultra slick American series soloist. It's a neck through with an alder body and a maple neck, a 12 to 16 inch compound radius, Seymour Duncan JB TB4 bridge pickup, and 2 flat strat single coils, and a Floyd Rose 1500 series trem. The first mistake that I hear people making all the time is luckily extremely easy to fix, because it's just that they're using the exact same technique and ideas to harmonize fast parts as they are for slow parts. You have to go about harmonizing fast and slow passages completely differently. When I'm harmonizing fast parts, I'm thinking way more about scales and intervals. When I'm harmonizing slower, more melodic passages, I'm always thinking about chord tones first. The example from today combines both some fast, shreddy stuff and some slower, more melodic things, so I'm gonna show you how I approach both. To demonstrate this, we're gonna start with a sort of fast, shreddy little bit of the solo, which ties into the second mistake that I see people making, which is not knowing which scale to use to harmonize their solo. The answer to this is actually kind of mind-numbingly simple, but if nobody ever told you, it's possible that you might just not know. And it's just that you're gonna use the exact same scale that the melody part is in. The first part that you're trying to harmonize, whatever scale that's in, you're gonna use the same one to harmonize. If you feel dumb that you didn't know that, don't. I didn't know it for an embarrassingly long time. No matter what, you're going to be using your ear for all of these. So number one, above all else, is what sounds good to you. If you don't know anything about scales, you don't know any scales on the guitar at all, it's all right, I got you. I have a course where you can learn every single scale on the guitar in 60 minutes, and there's a link in the description where you can get that. Everything in this example is in the key of B minor. We're gonna go straight into the shreddy bit, which looks like this. Here it is slowed down. The absolute easiest and simplest way to go about doing this is to just take the part that you've got and move it up or down 2 scale degrees, and then change the part to fit the notes of the scale. So it's never gonna be the exact same shape that the initial part was. You're gonna mold it to fit the notes of the scale. So we'll take this first bit, and we're gonna move it up 2 scale tones. So we started here, and then 1, 2, and then we're gonna conform the shape to the notes of the scale. Let's see how that works. So that sounds pretty good. It doesn't sound quite right to me. It's close. I'll put that down on the maybe track. So now let's try doing the same thing, but we're gonna move it down 2 notes in the scale instead. So we started here, we're going down 2 notes within the scale. Try that. Yeah, that to me sounds much more like it. This technique is called harmonizing in diatonic thirds. So the distance between the 2 notes in the harmony is always going to be some kind of a third, either a major third or a minor third. But because we're just applying the shape to the scale, it's always going to be a diatonic third away, and what that means is that it's just whatever third happens to exist within the scale. You don't have to know that to apply this technique, but it is cool to know. Now I'm going to apply that to the rest of this little shreddy bit. So that gives us the following. Right now, I want to cover the biggest mistake that I hear people making, the one that I think sounds the worst, but sometimes also pretty cool. I call it the Slayer Special, and that's when you just pick an interval and stick with it the whole time, the same exact interval, like a perfect fifth, a perfect fourth. It's not that it like necessarily sounds bad or that it's wrong or whatever. That doesn't really matter. If what you're going for is this particular sound, then great. Here's how you get it. This is something that you've heard Slayer do more often with their like riffs rather than lead guitar parts, but the principle is the same, and that's that you just take the exact same shape and you move it up whichever interval you're trying to use, and then you just play the exact same thing. For example, if we take the part and move it a fourth away, so it definitely has a real particular sound to it, right? It's not like completely god-awful. It just contains notes that are outside of the key and therefore have kind of a hairy sound to them. So that was all parallel fourths, perfect fourths. Now we're gonna try fifths. This is something that you heard in the 80s a lot. You hear it in a lot of like Steve Vai songs and stuff like that. I don't really love it, but if you're using it to harmonize like some ultra evil thing, kind of like Slayer would do, then it works great. The best part is that it's extremely easy to do. All you gotta do is just scoot the thing around to whatever interval sounds good for you. I'll pick one at random. So that was all minor sixths. Let's try all tritones. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Well, it's something. Gnarly. That sounds like space alien music, which is probably why Rings of Saturn likes to do it so much. We have to make a very important distinction here though, because the first thing that we did, the one that I liked, is a constant interval type. They're all thirds, but the difference between using diatonic thirds and all just major or minor thirds is that one of them is going to use notes from the scale, from the key, and one of them is by definition going to have notes that are outside of the key. So now we're gonna take a stab at harmonizing the melodic part of the solo, this little melody thing here that happens, basically the whole second half. And right here is where we wanna be very aware of the next mistake that we're trying to avoid, which is not caring about the chords that you're playing over. If you're playing some notes that are outside of the chord tones with something that's fast, it's not gonna be as obvious at all because you literally don't hear them for as long as when you're playing a big long note and it's held out and it's just hanging there. So that means for this next section, we're gonna put a lot more emphasis on choosing chord tones for our harmony notes. And one effect of that is that we're not going to be using a constant interval type anymore. We're probably gonna wind up with a bunch of different interval types throughout this whole melody. You might have no idea what a chord tone is. That's all right, it's super simple. It's just a note that's from the chord that you're playing over. That's it. The chords that we've got for this first bit are B minor, A major, E minor, and then G major, A, and then B minor, A, G, A. So here are the notes of B minor. The melody note is on the third, so we could start on the fifth. This F sharp. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just hold whatever the first note is until it doesn't work anymore. Trial and error. It works for those first three notes pretty well. Last note, not so much. Part of the reason is that the chord changes right here from a B minor to an A major. And the melody line is actually just arpeggiating an A major chord in reverse. So in this case, playing the same arpeggio, but starting on a different note of the arpeggio is probably what's gonna work best. I'm just gonna start one note in the arpeggio lower. Let's see how that works. See, that sounds pretty sick to me. This is how I build harmony parts, one little section at a time. And then of course, by the time you're done, it doesn't sound like a performance, so you have to go back and learn it and then play it for real. But this is a good way to put it together a couple notes at a time. So then the next chord is an E minor. The melody note starts on the 3rd, which is G. That leaves us an E and a B as the root and the 5th. Let's see what it sounds like if I start on a B. This is another one I could just hang out on. Or if I want to contour it a little bit more, kind of like that. Now, if I'm gonna start on this E, because the melody line collides with that E, I'll kind of want to get it out of the way. But if I contour it along with the line, I wind up on the 6th, which is not a chord tone. So instead I could resolve it to the 5th. Let's see how that sounds. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. That's got a kind of a classic, cool sound. Let's listen to our whole bit so far. Really, either option could work. You just have to decide which one you like better. Now we're going from a G major to an A major, and we've got just 2 notes to harmonize, 1 per chord. The melody line goes from the 5th of the G to the 3rd of A, which means I can fill it out by using the 3rd of G and the 5th of A. Sneaky, I know. So that would be these 2 notes. Let's see if it works. That sounds good to me, but also like slightly awkward. It sounds just a little unnatural for some reason. The other option is to just play a G and an A, which feels kind of, I don't know, boring to me, but at the same time, it is guaranteed to work because those are the only 2 notes that we haven't used so far. And even though they're just the roots, it might just work. So we're back to B minor. The melody part here actually does not start on a chord tone. This is a 6th of B. This presents a bit of a challenge. Doesn't necessarily change anything. I'm still gonna try chord tones from B. So let's try the 3rd of B minor. This D. Ooh, I just kind of improvised that second part, but it sounded tasty. That worked really good. Woo! Don't you love an accidental pinch harmonic that just works? Woo, it screams. This guitar is awesome. I'm always leaving room for happy accidents. Sometimes you just try stuff and it works. So all I did was land on the 5th of A, which is a C sharp. And then I just bent it to match the note. And then we've got G to A. Starting on a G, I'm gonna try starting on the 3rd. Oh yeah, that's sounding real good. So I'm kind of using a combination of starting and ending phrases on chord tones, but also doing a little bit of contouring along with the melody, because the melody isn't only using chord tones. That would just be really boring. That would just be arpeggios the musical. And of course, above all else, you're using this stuff and this way of thinking about it as a starting point, as a springboard. And then you're gonna use your ear to decide what actually sounds good after you try a bunch of different stuff. This is just the basic starting point for how to do it. You can go absolutely hog wild with all of these ideas and stuff that you come up with on your own and combine them to come up with some really unique and original, awesome sounding harmonies. With that in mind, let's listen to everything that we harmonized here. I'm pretty happy with that. Even though there's no hard, concrete, right or wrong way to harmonize a given melody, hopefully you can use the stuff that you've learned here today to keep from sounding like a total noob when you're writing your harmonies. Huge thanks to Jackson Guitars for sponsoring this video with this amazing American Series soloist. For more information about this guitar and where you can get one for yourself, check the link in the description. And if you're having a hard time getting started writing a song, you're definitely gonna wanna watch this video right here where I tell you why you're having so much trouble just getting started. And I'll see you real soon.